warriors. Soldiers, speak out. We have a duty to all children.
Welcome to all of you. We're pleased to see you here with us today. And before we get started here, we have a special guest, and it's Zahid Chaudhry, who's been in deportation proceedings for 17 years to get sent back to Pakistan after serving 4 years in the Army. So we'd like to get a special... Would you like to say anything?
Sure, I would just like to do a quick reminder that we need to see that no veteran serves alone. It's the family who serves. It's the wife. It's the kids. It's the unrecognized. It's the community. It's the household. So when you rip apart the fabric of family and take that loved one of that community, that household, that lover, and deport them in Washington. So my message is that we need to stay on it and stay on it and stay on it, because we are not in it for ourselves. We're not in it for our family, our community. We are in it to make a legacy and standing on the correct side of history. We must not let go. We must keep the dream alive to keep it going. Thank you so very much.
I think the next thing we'll do is we'll introduce our panel. It's up here today. Ruhman is operations coordinator for the Deported Veterans Advocacy Project, and he'll be talking about some of our legislative efforts on behalf of deported veterans. And Lupita Sopran, we don't have any interlock with Mexico this time. We're not connected up because we got somebody right from Mexico right here with us today.
Yeah.
And that's Lupita Sopran, and she's a staff worker in the resource center that we have there in Tijuana, and she'll be telling you a little bit about what her experience is. And then we have Martha Garcia, and she's here about her son. She'll be telling you his story. And then we have Maurice Barton, who has been working with us for many, many years, and we'll be talking a wrap up about some of the consequences of what's been going on with deported veterans. So that's our panel, and Maurice is also the Northern California operations coordinator. I'm going to pass around a sign-up sheet, and Shelley has asked me to ask y'all to please print when this goes around, okay? So, because she's got to transcribe all of these and put them into the computer. But you'll notice on this one, it's not like all the sign-up sheets that are going around. This one here is asking you for your congressional district and your organization. If you don't know your congressional district, we'll put a zip code in there. We can ascertain it from that. But the reason we're doing this is because we're going to try to incorporate you directly into the campaign, and I'll tell you a little bit more about that in a minute. And we need to have your information if you'd be willing to share it with us.
Will they be
Okay,
agents?
so I'll just pass this around. Beg your pardon?
Only the ones we send the phone numbers and addresses to.
Yeah, you can't reach anybody else. Okay, so that's going around, and that's going to be a big help for us, and we appreciate you taking care of that. Now I want to talk a little bit about the Deported Veterans Advocacy Project and how we evolved. We originally started out just doing workshops for, we were just a group of people doing workshops on behalf of deported veterans. First one I did was in 2012 in Miami, and the first one that Jan did was 2009, but I forgot where it was.
It was Maryland.
In Maryland.
Yeah.
So this has been an ongoing thing, and this is a continuation of a building process. And we started out as just this group. And then in 2016, we kind of pulled it together and petitioned. We had a good fundraising effort, and we talked to Michael McPherson, and we put together our relationship with Veterans for Peace. And then from that, we evolved into being a project of Veterans for Peace. And that's all built off of these workshops that we've been doing over these years. And so our job as the advocacy project is just try to try to keep the support going for our operation in Tijuana to keep the office up and running, and we need a lot of help with that. To coordinate our below the border veterans with the veterans that appear in the U.S., which is we're doing right here, and to provide ancillary support. And everything else that's done with the deported veterans is done by the people in Tijuana right at this particular juncture. They're their own operation. The project is just kind of an administrative thing with Veterans for Peace. And so I would like to introduce Jan as our operations coordinator to speak a little bit about history and the legislation.
Thank you, Bill. Appreciate everybody being here. Can you all hear me well in the back of the room? Yes. Good. So we became aware of this issue in 2007 in late November of that year. We received an email from a member of Vietnam Vets Against the War who was working with a military reporter, and his publisher didn't want to put on the issue of deported veterans, so he sent our friend Mutt an email saying, this is an issue, my guy won't touch it, maybe you guys will. It went to Willie in Florida. We were running a blog at that point called VetSpeak, and then he sent it to me and said, you're in California, see if this is a real issue before we write anything on it. And I did. A woman living in Orange County was the starter of that email, and she had been begging on behalf of her fiance, who was a Jamaican Gulf War I Marine Corps veteran, locked up facing deportation in El Centro, California. He lost his case and he was deported to Jamaica. We have contact with him occasionally, but he no longer comes to the United States, and he certainly can't come here and access his VA health care. We figure that since the law changed in 1996, that over 100,000 veterans have been deported to countries around the globe. We are tracking close to 530 countries right now. We have many veterans in the Baja California region and along the borders in other areas, Nogales, Ciudad Juarez, that are wanting to get organized and trying to get organized, but it's a difficult situation. We found it difficult to organize ourselves because we're not rich, unfortunately. But the legislative effort that we started to mount was mounted in 2008, and a lawyer drafted the bill. And the bill says, very simply, it says we're going to amend 8 U.S. Code 1101 Alpha 22 to include a third category, which would be a citizen and a national is of the United States. And a citizen and national is either born here or naturalized. And a person who, though not a citizen of the United States, who owes permanent allegiance to the United States, is a U.S. national. The Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals in 1996, when this law caught veterans up, a gentleman by the name of, forget his name, Dejan V. Gonzalez was the case. And they came back and they said he sued on the grounds that he was a U.S. national because he had taken the oath of enlistment, which closely mirrors the oath of citizenship. And the court ruled, and it said in their head footing, we note with discomfort a rule of law that results in the deportation of a former honorably discharged member of the United States military. It is, however, the role of Congress and not the courts to make law. So we have to change the law. We've gotten a lot of traction in the last decade working on this issue. A lot of it is coming out of the efforts of the actual deported veterans themselves in Baja and other places. Those that have come back into the United States are fighting for the cause, and they're here under the wire because if they are picked up, they're deportable again. But what we want to do is we want to make these guys, at the moment they take the oath of enlistment, the following shall be nationals, but not automatically citizens of the United States. If they wish to become citizens, they can apply for citizenship and go forth with that. But if they just want to be a national who can live here on their green card for the rest of their life and not be facing deportation, then we need to make them nationals. And it would be a person who by conscription or by enlistment entered any branch of the United States Armed Forces, and it shall be retroactive to service person previously removed from the United States. We look at this issue as a veterans issue. Many members of Congress look at it as an immigration issue. Others look at it as a criminal issue. reality of it is that had they been given the respect and the honor and the dignity they deserve when they put up their right hand and swore an oath to protect this nation against enemies, both foreign and domestic, and put on that uniform, whether it was peacetime or wartime, they wrote a check up to and including their life. When they deploy overseas, they are status force agreements, they are U.S. nationals. They're stripped of that nationality status when they return. So many of these kids have been told, because they're immigrants, they come from neighborhoods, they may not be the most versed in our laws or even our language. They're told by recruiters that they can become U.S. citizens by entering our military. They've been told this since the inception of our nation. The governors, before we even had states in the United States, were promising citizenship to military people with military training from Europe. We didn't have anything to offer, except if we win, you can have citizenship. So it's always been the carrot dangling in front of the donkey. And I think that's how they think of immigrants, to be quite candid with you, as somebody to use and abuse and put to the task. And if they go overseas and die, they can be buried in the VA cemetery and they can be made posthumously a United States citizen. It turns out that these kids have been drafted in our wars and are still required to register for selective service since our Civil War, World War I, World War II, Korea, and Vietnam. We no longer draft, but when they reach 18, they're required to register for selective service. If they don't register, they're reportable. If they do not call and come forth, if there was a draft, they're deportable. Now, since 1996, when the law changed under the Republican-controlled House under Newt Gingrich and under the Republicans in the Senate, and the law that Bill Clinton signed, and the law was entitled the Illegal Immigration Reform and Responsibility Act. It makes it sound like that they're dealing with all illegal immigrants. Nothing was further from the truth. It caught every single one of them up. And three things that law did was it made crimes in the past that were considered to be too minor for deportation, a simple DUI, pulling over to the side of the curb where the police gives you a blow, they take you to jail, impound your car, the next morning you get out, the judge puts you on a probation, you go through an alcohol treatment program, that's a deportable offense. Writing a bad check, even if you had funds in the bank and you thought you did and you didn't have it, or it bounced, that's a deportable offense. Possession of marijuana, because the federal government still looks at it as a Class 1 Schedule 1 drug, along with heroin and morphine, that's a deportable offense. A shouting match between a husband and wife that never resulted in any physical contact, where the police were called, come to the home, and they asked the man to, if he would remove himself from the home this evening, since there's no violence that's gone on besides the yelling, and get his keys. He and wife can work it out tomorrow. They'll give you a ticket. You'll appear in court. And the judge put him in an anger management class for 6 months. We have 2 Vietnam veterans in Colorado. One was in a bar fight, and the other was in that shouting match I'm telling you about. And they both received their deportation letters 10 days apart from one another. They're still fighting their case since 2009, to a standstill for the most part. But we think that these kids should have been given their just due at the moment they took that oath. Right now, there is an effort by a lot of Congress people to write laws, and 5 years ago we didn't have one single law that was coming up by any congressman. Now we've got several. Every single year, several of them get reintroduced again. The one that's presently, the one that's on the table that the vets down south in Mexico want to support is H.R. 1078. And it's from a congressman whose name escapes me in the 15th District in Texas. And it's called Repatriate Our Patriots Act. I disagree with the law as it's written. I've disagreed with every single law that any congressman has put on the table. They go from 3 pages to 11 to 12 to 20 to 30, and every one of them excludes anybody who did not, one, have an honorable discharge. And I know from serving in Vietnam, I know a lot of guys that receive administrative discharges other than honorable conditions. It goes on today still. So that simple discharge means nothing to me. What means anything to me is the act of enlisting, of doing what less than 1% of the American public does. What 35,000 or more refugee immigrants to our country who are here legally do every single year now is enlist in the United States military. ICE, which is, for those who don't know the term, Immigration Customs Enforcement, I'm sorry, I need to back up. That law did that one, minor things, and then two, they took away the discretion of a judge to look at anything besides the crime that was in front of them. And these guys aren't even always lawyers or judges. They're bureaucrats from Immigration and Naturalization Service or some other agency, or even ICE, that are acting as judges. And when ICE tells them that this is an aggravated felony, those things that we're talking about, the misdemeanors, those are aggravated felonies in the eyes of that law. And the moment you say felony, somebody thinks, wow, these guys are heavy hitters. We don't need these guys. But it doesn't boil down to what law they broke, because veterans have been running afoul of the law. I think there's 115,000 veterans nationwide in jail today. Many of them with Bronze Stars, Silver Stars, and Purple Hearts. We've had Vietnam veterans deported across the border in the last few years. One gentleman, a very, very, very humble man, very small, served in Vietnam. When we got his DD-214, 2 Bronze Stars, Week for Valor. Not a Purple Heart. Everything in the battle went everywhere but around him, but he did a hell of a job, obviously. They go across that border, they go across with nothing. Homeless. They go across in a paper jumpsuit often. They come with no money, with no identifications, no phone. Straight from a lockup, they come across. There's a gentleman who, Martha here, the mother, and Jose, the father. Where's Jose at? That's Jose. This is Jose Roberto Martinez, Segovia Martinez. That's his full name.
Segovia Benitiz.
Benitiz. He's an Iraq Marine Corps veteran. They've had him in deportation twice. The first time was about 5 or so years ago. After he had gone through jail and served his sentence, he ended up with an immigration hold from ICE and had to be transferred to an immigration jail to face deportation in an immigration court. The kid was rated with the VA with post-traumatic stress disorder. He had traumatic brain injury. He wasn't the same kid that Martha raised and Jose did, who went off to war, who came home different, who had problems adjusting, who, because of the violence that he was taught to perpetrate on people, that was his anger. He was an adrenaline junkie, like many of us who come back from combat are. We act out our rages in motorcycles and drugs, bar fights, brandishing weapons, you name it, veterans have done it. So when you run afoul of the law, if you're an American citizen, you get out of jail, you start over again. But if you are a foreign national who is legally here in this country, who legally joined our military and got out, even with an honorable discharge, 2 Bronze Stars and a Purple Heart, your ass isn't going to be saved. It's just not going to be done. The third thing that law did was it took away the right to bond out on a bail. So a family member pulled out in the immigration hold, could no longer work, could no longer support his family. Zahid talked about family destruction. Maria knows about family destruction. And that's what they're doing at the border now. They're separating families. People who come up here fleeing from the violence we created in Central America. The poverty that we've continued to promote and create Central America, South America, and in Mexico. Our policies. Now that these kids are locked up, they're not locked up in immigration jails. They're locked up in Core Civic, which is a private prison corporation nationwide, and other private contractors. They're run like hotels. I used to sell real estate, and I used to sell to guys land who built motels, Best Western, that type of thing. They had an occupancy ratio that they had to have over the course of a year to break even, and the profit was beyond that. So they keep these kids in these lockups with these private contractors because it is profitable for that private contractor who makes donations to our congresspeople, as we well know, who have been bought and sold. Not just most of them, all of them. They didn't get into that position without getting down on their knees to somebody with money for the most part, to be honest. So the special circumstances with Jose in the state of California, he had post-traumatic stress disorder. There is a law on the books that he has a right to an affirmative defense for post-traumatic stress disorder, and if you can prove it, it's supposed to be something that's taken into consideration during the trial by the jury, by the judge, and the sentencing guidelines. But he's allowed to present it. He was shot down. The judge just completely denied it. And that attorney, who was a lousy attorney, not even did anything. He didn't appeal at all, not once. Let it just roll down the road and appealed in court and went forward. We opened up a new office in Mexico about 45 days ago. We finally got it operational with computers, with Magic Jack phones for connections into the United States, with desks for the guys to sit at. It's a clean operation above the office we have on the ground level at street front, which is a place where vets walk by. And Maria can tell you more, but the office is strategically situated at the border at the point of deportation. They have to walk past that office to get into downtown Tijuana. Whether it's open or closed, there's numbers, there's addresses, phone numbers, after hours. And her husband Hector's picked up guys that were called from the Mexican immigration folks. Say, we got a veteran down here. In the middle of the night, gets up, go down, pick him up, and starts the process. So what we're doing now is we're trying to organize with our deported veterans who have become organized enough, and many of their lives have been, I would just say it's stabilized at this point, because many of them are getting their pension benefits if they're older and unemployable, which is $1,136 and some odd cents a month, which is a fortune in Mexico. Because a good paying job in Mexico that a guy like that could get would be a call center, because he speaks English. Most of them speak pretty good English. They almost have no accent at all. But that call center will work you 50 to 60 hours a week, 5 to 6 days a week, and you will make 100 to 120 take home. And if you're broke and you're taking the bus, you'll spend 25% of your money going back and forth on the bus. So very little money, but now we've got veterans who were pushed across that border. Well, the gentleman with the 2 bronze stars, the Vietnam veteran. He's got rated now with post-traumatic stress disorder, has a disability. He's getting decent money. Other veterans have been 100% rated. You know, it's just been an ongoing battle. But that's what we wanted to create on the ground in Mexico. That's what was created at the office we presently have. Now it's time to move on to another field, and that is the legislation. So we're going to ask these guys, and they've all agreed, to go in and sit down several hours a week, several days a week, making phone calls to their sphere of influence. I personally live in the 51st Congressional District in the state of California in San Diego. I have seen 3 congressmen come and go in the period of time I've been working on this issue, knocking on their doors. I'll probably see a 4th one or a 5th one if I last that long. But the call campaign will also reach out to members of Congress because the issue needs to be raised with them. If they don't hear about it, they don't know it exists, or they don't even think it's on the radar. We know for certain that if there's not a congressional legislative effort or a community effort to hold them accountable, it'll be like Martin Luther King with the Civil Rights Act. When Lyndon Baines Johnson didn't want to sign it immediately, he said, make me do it. We have to embarrass these people to the point where they're going to make them do it. Now, all these laws that these congressmen write with 1, 3, 20 pages, they exclude people. They're right off the bat, they're throwing people under the bus. We refuse to do that. We think it goes back to the point where they did this. That's where you start, and that's where they end up coming back home to the United States. If they screw up, I have no problem locking them up again. If they do it again, they get locked up. But they should be able to be gotten out and gotten a 2nd, 3rd, 4th chance, whatever that is. We're also building valuable allies and starting to work with Military Families Speak Out, Jeff and Pat and others. In fact, Martha and Jose are members of MFSO, live in the same city of Long Beach that Jeff and Pat do. And they've started a team called Team Jose that's reaching out into the congressional district of them. And it's also reached out to the gentleman who's in charge of the Veterans in the House Representative, the Veterans Affairs Committee. I forget his name, Jeff? Huh? Mark Takano, yeah. He's on board with the issue. Many of them are. There have been legislation that's shown up to 20 and 40 supporters or co-sponsors. There's none right now. The only piece of legislation that's on the table that's all isn't going to ever get out of committee, and that's H.R. 1078. And it's a flawed bill. So we're looking for people like you folks. We've identified many members of Veterans of Peace that are working on this issue independently. Many just in newsletters whose chapters are working on this independently of our efforts. We need to bring this together now that there is an actual Deported Veterans Advocacy Project sanctioned by the national board, national organization. This year, they did the one thing that Willie worked on for a long time. We created a budget and they allocated money to support the operation for 1 year upstairs in that new campaign office. So we really need to get this off the ground and we really need to raise money. I'm going to quit talking because we need money, money, money. But I'll quit talking now. I want to turn it over to Maria. But I also want to do, before I turn this, she received this award on behalf of the veterans. And what it was is, this is the Veterans Caucus from the California Democratic Party. This is their National Veterans Caucus. And they were given the 2019 Veterans Organization of the Year, and they're not even in California or the United States. And it was for unified deported veterans for their outstanding and meritorious service. For their outstanding and meritorious service as a veterans organization to the mission of the Veterans Caucus. The benefits they've gotten, the attention they've called to the issue, the allies they've brought across the border, the church groups, all these folks. Don came out of Maine, spent a week. I forget your last name right now, Don?
Kimball.
Kimball. Yeah, it's got a radio show in Maine called Friendly Fire. So a lot of folks have done this. But let's turn it over to Maria. She'll tell you about one of their projects and many other things.
Hello, everybody. And I know he said Maria, so everybody's going like, what? It's Lupita. Well, it's Maria Guadalupe Cibrian Lopez. So short, Lupita. Welcome and thank you, everybody, for being here. And first thing I want to say, and this is my husband, Hector Lopez. He's one of the co-directors in our Unified Deported Veterans Office, Chapter 182, Sergeant Barrios. They want to thank Vets for Peace. From the bottom of their heart, all of them want to thank them because we wouldn't be where we're at right now, helping our deported veterans, if it wasn't for the funding that we receive from every single one of you that has supported us. And I want to thank you, myself, and of course you know we're a poor chapter over there. Again, you know, every little thing helps. Every little thing helps. So even a commitment of a few dollars a month from everybody. So it's important that we continue to get that help until we get our veterans back. We're there helping our veterans. We find them homes, employment, housing, employment, treatment if they're needed. A lot of them have different levels of PTSD. We don't have treatment for PTSD in Mexico. So it is important that we bring them back as soon as possible. We also help through our chapter, our humanitarian efforts, our community. We're involved in our community. And of course that helps our veterans, integration into society. So when they do come back, you know, they have that under their belt already so that they don't go back to, you know, self-medication and getting in trouble again. But we help our, there's a few shelters that we help. And right now with the issue with the asylum seekers, again, part of all of Vets for Peace, our heart is there for all of them. And so we are supplying water. And we have a big tank, it has the Vets for Peace label on it. But there's so many that are being sent to Tijuana. And those are the pictures there.
Twice a month this tank gets filled.
And right now, just
It's the only potable water they have.
last week, it was a week and a half, and they were already calling. One shelter has over 300 asylum seekers there with their children. So in a week and a half, and it takes about $70 to $80 depending on how much water is pumped into this tank. And so it is crucial that we continue to get your help. If you want to visit, we also help American veterans. If you want to relocate, a lot of them can't afford with what they're getting to live in California or to live in the United States. So we can help find you a nice place in front of the beach for $550, $600. So we are involved that way with all of our veterans there. What else can I say? I mean, it's just so important to get them back. A lot of them have lost their families. Again, that family separation. They have lost their families. A lot of their families are far away. They can't afford to pay 2 places. The divorces, they're alone. So not only are affected by their PTSD from the service, learned helplessness from the service, then now they lose their families. They're kicked out of the country they thought that was theirs, that they were willing to put their lives on the line for. So please, all I can say is continue to help and call and make these changes. We need them. Even if our president, we don't have hope that he's going to do anything right now. But let's, every week, if he gets a call from everybody that says, bring them back. This is a veterans issue and they need to be back in their country. I know it's going to make a difference. If he says he loves our veterans, if everybody says honor our veterans, then let's make a change together and bring them back.
Before we introduce Martha, I would like to say about Lupita's and their work there in Tijuana is that without Veterans for Peace support, they wouldn't be able to be outreaching into these other efforts that are happening in the community. They would be struggling just to keep their little office open. So we're fulfilling our statement of purpose through their chapter down there with their work. So the office work that gets done is the Peaches right at the heart of it. And in that office, that small office, they've done all the things that Jan described that have benefited the people who have come down there. And I just want to say that this recent support we got for the expansion of this office is going to be able to maybe even double, triple our outreach. But at the same time, incorporating all of you all together with us and making this a constant water torture on the Congress by calling them and annoying them and questioning the language of their bills. That's what's going to create some change, because the bill may never make it through like Jan said, but we'll create the dialogue and we'll raise the consciousness as we go. And a few years ago when we started this, nobody knew nothing, including us. So it's up to all of us to grow and carry this message forward, and Lupita's at the heart of this, and give her another round of applause.
She's our treasurer.
Our next panelist, Martha, I will allow to go ahead and share her story with you.
Hi, thank you for helping me over here. Thank you, everybody, and thank you for your services to everybody in the military. My name is Marta Garcia, and I'm sorry, I have this situation been through like since last year. I am a mother for Jose Segovia Benitiz. He served for 8 years, the Marines. I came in this country when my son, he's only 1 year old. I left my son and I bring him over here. I'm from El Salvador. And I know it's a lot of bad history for our country, but I left my country because the violence in my country, the situation. Part of my family got killed in El Salvador, friends. So I decided to leave my country, come over here, to look for different life. I bring my son, like I said before. He was 3 years old. He didn't know nothing about our country. He's from here. He decided to serve this country since he was a little boy. That's what I hear when I went to preschool, kindergarten, school, whole school. And I try to tell him to not because I don't love this country, because I see too many situations part because he was illegal. He's a little boy. We have a legal paper. I worked this country for many years. I am a nursing assistant, and I work hard over here. And I know many people have a different history for our country, for people come over here in this country, but I'm proud of being in this country and proud about my son service in this country. But now we have a situation, my son, because it's only resident, he got in trouble, like other people got in trouble, other veteran, because the law did not understand. Oh yeah, and I'm sorry, kind of the situation for me is not easy, excuse me. But my son, he was a good guy, very good son. Before he went to Iraq to serve, he came with a lot of problems. I never see my son the same. Even sometime when he was already at the house, he get out at the nighttime with dreams, bad dreams, sore, and pointing, where he have a gun in his hand. And I said, son, you're already at the house. So he have a drinking problem because, most of the people, they don't find the cure for his problem. They never. My son, he was diagnosed with a brain injury, not right away. He lost 94% here. I think that there was a diagnostic at the 2000, I think 4 years after. See how much time the people find the cure and the help the people need. It's not that it happened like him over here. Other veterans already deported. I went there I think a month ago, I think I went to Tijuana, to Playas, and see those people that already deported after they served this country. They broke my heart. Even when the people do something wrong, I understand. They pay already. They was in jail like that for many years. And after that, he grabbed and threw it like a trash. And I understand, and I know many people that not agree. I don't agree if they do something wrong, but they need to find out why. What is the problem? Like in my own case, my son, he have a drinking problem. So he got in trouble. He went to jail. I think he went to jail for 4 years straight. He very sick. You know how many years my son, he doesn't have no medication? Now, after this problem, because he's not citizen, he faces deportation. Almost a step to be deported in the last year. He's locked out with immigration already a year and a half, waiting for deportation. We knocked the door everywhere to try to help my son. And I know people, they help us. And I just say thank you to everybody here, because I know this is new, maybe nobody know about the situation, but they happen. It's injustice. The law has to change.
Give her some love.
Yeah.
That right there is in our statement of purpose under the title, The Cost of War.
And justice for veterans and victims of war.
Exactly. And I want to thank you, Martha. That's from our heart. And for those of you who might want to talk to Martha after the thing and find out how you can support their effort, please do. And our next person that we're going to have up here is our brother Maurice Martin. So I turn it over to you, my brother.
Thank you. Thank you, Martha. For people, Jan, Liz. And thank you, audience, for coming in to. Thank you. I don't really need a microphone.
Go ahead, please.
Martha sort of threw me off my game. Because you just heard, Jesus Lord, this is so egregious and it pisses me off so much. Here's a mother, a family member, who escaped violence from another country. Name your country. El Salvador. Name one of your countries, to come over here for a better life, for safety and security and betterment of their family. And then one of the things that we ask from everyone is commitment. I don't know no greater commitment than a mother, a father, a parent, to offer up their child for their new adopted country, and not even to be a citizen. To adopt them out and have their son and daughters to go out and to both put sweat and blood into the ground, serve that country, come back, and because of their service to that country, end up making mistakes or suffer consequences of those things and make mistakes. And for that, they get treated like Kleenex tissue and tossed out of the country. And then punish the person who brought them here and offered up their sundry for service to the country that they love. For me, that is uncomfortable. As a veteran, I was going to, usually when I do these silent talks, I ask people to raise your hand, how many people are veterans, but that's sort of useless here. But how many people remember their oath? You know, God, country, so forth and so on. But one of the oaths that we make is that we, as we go into our field, no matter what your field was, whether you're in combat, cook, servicing persons, whatever that may be, truck driver, cook mechanic, one of the things that we all agreed upon, that we made an oath to each other, was to leave no veteran behind. That obligation did not end with the taking off of the uniform. That oath did not end because of that. And even beyond that, there's an agreement that was made between us. When we took that oath, that was not just us saying that we were going to put our lives on the lines, that we're going to do the best we could and all that sort of thing, God, honor, country. But that was also an agreement made to us, that if you go and put yourself in harm's way, or gave your life, or you sacrifice yourself, that you will be looked after, that we're going to look after you. Your family will be looked after. That is a broken promise. Promises made and promises not kept is illogical to me. For deported veterans, the issue even goes a step further. For those of you putting people in double jeopardy, if I made a mistake, regardless of what that mistake is, once I paid for that mistake, we had another agreement that we made that I could go into the jail or prisons or probation or a timeout, whatever your thing is, that you could start over. You were given a second chance. You were given another opportunity to be the best that you could be, or to be there for your family, to be a breadwinner, to be able to be loved and love others there. That was our agreement, that we asked that. We said that to our country. And our country has a responsibility to make sure that our government keeps that responsibility. It is our government that has failed us, but it's our country, it's you and me and us, that make our government stay with that agreement. So let me say something about the deported veterans. The issue is not whether you honorably discharged, whether you dishonorably discharged, whether you made a mistake. The issue is deportation. Don't get twisted here. Don't make no mistake. The issue is about deportation, and this deportation is immigrant, not racism, but immigrant racism. That's what it is. And we have to be conscious of that and look at it and be able to look squarely in the face of what that is. Who is being deported? You can watch it in the country. You can watch what's happening in our country here. And this has been going on. I've been to Tijuana many times ago to go in, and I have people who have been deported since 1990s, for 20 years, before we even found out what was going on. And thanks to Jan for standing up in the middle of a park, standing on a soapbox, doing what Super Comandante said at one time when they asked him, said, hey, how did you start your revolution? He said, I started out by preaching to flies. And that's what Jan was doing, out there yelling at flies. And then people gradually, piece by piece and piece, and got us where we are today. But it starts with one person. You can be a part of that one person. We have legislation. So I took a couple of notes, but thank you so much. You kind of threw me off my game. But I talked about our oath. I talked about leaving no veteran behind. I talked about our responsibility. I want to talk a little bit about, did you know that ICE is under law is supposed to consider service before deporting veterans? They don't ask. We got thousands of veterans in detention now. And they don't even ask, we don't know how many thousands are in detention because we don't even ask the question, are you a veteran?
Don't trap them.
Are you a veteran?
That's what they're saying. They're saying they don't track them, but
They don't track them because they don't want us to know how many they deported and they don't want to know. Because here's what happens. If you ask the question, are you a veteran, that automatically, if you're incarcerated, that triggers you access to veteran court. Now, if you created a felony or something, you now don't have access to veteran court because it only deals with certain types of misdemeanors. But what it does do is those who only been, I know people who have been deported for nothing more than the tail light of their car from 1972.
A warrant.
A warrant. A warrant. So the issue is not what they did, the issue is trying to deport them. So what are we asking? First, one of the things we want to say, you want to talk to your colleagues, you want to talk to anybody you know, ask them, are they a veteran? That's all we want. To ask them if they're a veteran. Because those who are misdemeanors can get to go to court, and it allows them to have access to legal representation. Those who are not eligible for veteran court, now do at least find out, hey, the only way you can find out that I need your name, I need your address, I need to know who you are, what your charges are. Now, if I can't get you in veteran court, at least I can get you other types of legal representation. In order to be able to get the rules that is already written down there, because I'm a veteran, you need to take that into consideration before you deport me. I need to hold my own government to its things because I don't put me in double jeopardy. I served 3 years, 4 years, 5 years, 10 years. I know guys that spend 20 years in jail, come out only to be deported and again, without creating anything. Finish high school, finish college, did all those sort of things that you're supposed to do in trying to create a new life, only to be detained again for X amount of years and deported at their leisure. To countries where you don't speak the language, don't have a family, don't have any of the other things, they can't access the services and programs that not only that you deserve, that you earned. You earned.
Paid up front.
Paid, exactly. I paid up front. They paid up front. If you don't know who they are, they're the people who, when we were in the service, they were our cooks. They were people who fought next to us and protected us. Many of us sitting here probably were only made it back home because an immigrant protected us from things that we could not see. They drove our trucks. They're the ones who came in the truck or were in a helicopter and ran to us when we were laying on the ground and needed assistance and help. These are the people that they're deporting. They have a responsibility. We have a responsibility to make sure that this egregiousness has to end. This must stop. A phone call, a donation, something to say, I understand what that means. I served. I leave no veteran behind. I may not be able to do much with you. So I made a phone call to my congressman, to my state representative. So some of the things that we're trying to do, we're talking to governors. We're saying we've had some struggles, but we've made some success. We've had people who've been brought home because they was able to get pardons. What we're asking you to do, this is an international organization. We're having 140 chapters around the world, over 100 some chapters here in the United States. Call your state representative, not the ones you don't know, the one that served you in your thing, and say, I want my governor to stop deporting veterans. And the way you did is that I want legislation passed and have the governor to sign to pardon those veterans who are in danger of being deported. That can be a national effort. That can be an effort in your chapter. That can be an effort in your state. And we can make this a national effort. Because it is a smart thing. We can do this. We know it can work because we had the state of California do it. All right, now we over there in New Mexico. We got a New Mexico governor getting ready to do that. It can be done. And it started by one voice saying, hey, what are you doing? Ask your legislator, do you want to bring the deported veteran home? I don't want to hear that business about whether he's honorably discharged, dishonorably discharged, less than honorably discharged. No, the issue is that when bills come up, we're only supporting bills that bring everybody home. This is just everybody home. This is just like the women's struggle and the right to vote, and African Americans and women right to vote. And then they said, okay, you know, when they got together, they said, okay, we got to get somebody to vote. We'll get the black men the right to vote. And then they took and said, okay, we'll come back and get the women to vote. It took another 100 years for that to happen. So once I get back home and I get my deported veterans, I'm back home. We want to bring everybody home. And more importantly, let's start just like homelessness. It ain't about correcting the injury. It's stopping the bleeding in the first place. Stop deporting veterans. That'll be first start.
Yeah.
Let's work with that first. No more deporting veterans, period. And no, none. Because they, as Jan said, they paid up front, and people were giving up the most precious thing in their life, their children. So, last thing, I see Willie over there, he's freaking out. Thousands of veterans are locked up. We talked about that. Do you remember me saying anything about that? Did you remember me telling you they need to be considered before deporting? Let immigrants say, oh, this is enlistment shit. No, I'm sorry, this is enlistment. The people that they deported, come and get them to join the army. Join the army, get medical care, get you some college education, get some job training. Come on, we got to get general health care. Come on in. We'll get you. Not only are doing it here in the United States, they've been targeted because they're poor, they're immigrants, don't know really what's going on, and believe their freaking government that they came into. They're asking people in Puerto Rico and asking people in El Salvador. They're going to those countries saying, come over here.
Recruiting.
Come on down.
Recruit
you. Only to be turned around and discharged like Kleenex tissue. That is egregious. And how, if I was in another world, why would I ever enter into an agreement with the United States, whether it be nuclear arms or just name whatever it is, we agreement? Because you can't even keep the agreement with people who are bleeding for you, people who are giving up their children, the children who are out there bleeding for us. Well, why would I enter into an agreement with the United States that can't even keep their promise of people who are bleeding for them, sacrificing for them? So this is a much bigger issue than just, family separations. It's all true. Of veterans being treated like shit. True. But this is a national issue about who America is, who we are.